On the gleaming world of Orcs Prime, perfection was not merely celebrated, it was law. From the moment an Orion child emerged from the embryonic stasis chambers, their skin was smoothed by nanites, their minds sculpted by psionic harmonizers, every flaw identified and erased before it could even flicker into existence. Their spires of pure crystal spiraled into the thin, violet sky, casting no shadows because even darkness was deemed an imperfection to be eradicated. The Council of Clarity, a circle of ancient minds preserved in eternal light, decreed that scars, physical or emotional, were vestiges of primitive chaos, signs of weakness, echoes of an animal past they had long transcended. Each citizen wore translucent skin like polished moonstone, reflecting the sterile brilliance of their cities. They neither aged nor ached, neither wept nor laughed too loudly. Instead, they drifted through life in quiet, gleaming symmetry, a civilization of statues pretending to live. When the human envoy arrived, it was meant to be a diplomatic courtesy. One last gesture of tolerance before Orcs Prime closed its stargates forever, sealing away their flawless utopia from the chaotic galaxy beyond. The envoy's shuttle crashed on descent, torn open by unexpected solar flares that no Orion foresight had predicted. From the burning wreckage stumbled a lone human, Clara Yates, a mission biologist and cultural liaison, crawling on bleeding hands and knees. Orion healers rushed forward out of rigid duty, their minds recoiling at the sight of her torn skin, her bones protruding slightly from a broken forearm, her eyes bright with raw, unfiltered pain. They prepared to seal her wounds with instant nanofoam, to erase every blemish, to smooth her into acceptable shape. But Clara, gasping and shaking, pushed their instruments away. "No!" she whispered through cracked lips. "Leave them." They stared, horrified, their luminous eyes shimmering with confusion. She pressed her bloodied hand against the translucent cheek of the nearest healer, leaving a crimson smear that would have been unthinkable in their perfect halls. "These scars, they're proof I survived. Proof I'm still me." They did not understand. Their entire lives had been an unbroken glass surface, each scrape polished away before it could mar the collective reflection. They believed wholeness meant unchanging beauty. Clara's wounds were an abomination. But even as they pulled away, some of them found their hands lingering on her warm, imperfect skin, feeling a strange, electric rush that no nanite ever offered. Clara was confined to a healing chamber high above the city, expected to comply. Yet each night she traced the jagged lines of her wounds, humming fractured melodies that drifted across their silent air like rebellious comets. Curious Orions crept into her chamber, first in secret, then in growing numbers. They asked why she refused healing, why she carried her pain like a badge instead of a curse. She told them of her home, of rain that soaked clothes and left chills in the bones, of playground scrapes that became badges of courage, of old lovers who left emotional bruises that shaped her heart rather than erasing it. She described how each mark, each tear, each crack formed a story, a living record of every battle fought and every joy embraced. Her words echoed beyond her chamber, rippling through the crystalline towers. Some Orions began to hesitate before entering their morning rejuvenation baths. Others traced faint memories of injuries from before their final perfection, longing for a lost sense of vulnerability they didn't know they'd buried. Clara continued to heal slowly, naturally. As she walked through the corridors, her limp a living reminder of her ordeal, citizens began to follow her, drawn not to her flaws but to the light inside them. They watched how she embraced each breath as a gift, how she smiled through discomfort, how she wept openly when describing Earth's chaotic sunsets. At first the Council of Clarity threatened to exile her or erase her influence entirely, but cracks had already formed in their serene order. Young Orions, who had always felt a subtle emptiness beneath their polished skins, began scratching tiny lines into their arms, creating patterns they called living scripts. Older citizens gathered around Clara at dusk, listening to her stories with trembling fingers pressed to their flawless chests. One evening, under a sky they had once rendered perfectly smooth, Clara removed her shirt and revealed the scar on her side where a childhood surgery had left a crooked, puckered mark. Gasps swept through the crowd like a storm. But then, one by one, they approached, placing their palms over her scar, feeling its warmth, its history, its stubborn declaration of survival. In that touch, they felt something they had never known, a flicker of soul deeper than light, a strength beyond symmetry. Eventually, the council could no longer deny what spread through their city, like a dawn they couldn't sterilize. Citizens left the rejuvenation chambers, refusing daily perfecting procedures. They began to laugh, real, unplanned, echoing laughter that shook the crystal towers. Some painted their flawless skin with chaotic swirls. Others sang dissonant notes together in the halls where silence once reigned supreme. Clara watched them, tears flowing freely down her scarred cheeks. Her once broken arm, though crooked, had become a new symbol, an arm that reached out rather than ruled, that embraced rather than judged. In time, the Orions transformed their entire society. Statues once devoted to unblemished forms were recarved with cracks and rough edges, honoring survival and resilience over impossible flawlessness. Their once pristine plazas overflowed with imperfect murals, each splash of color a tribute to a moment truly lived. Clara remained among them as an honored guest, a living bridge to the raw, fierce spirit of humanity. Her story wove into their songs, her scars replicated in ceremonial paint, her laughter the seed from which an entire people finally bloomed. They had once celebrated perfection above all else. But when a human came, stumbling and bleeding beneath a sky too smooth to hold stars, they learned at last the wild, radiant beauty hidden inside every scar. And in those jagged lines, they discovered what it truly meant to be alive.